Hi, this is Alan from Warrendale Community Church. We're in a message number 14 in part 2 about the providence of God and the will of God and how they fit together. We have talked about 7 areas to act by the will of God in the providence of God. There is circumstance, we've already looked at that, and chance, and now we're going to look at happenings, things that just happen. And we're going to look and start off this part of the study in this message, Acts chapter 20 at verse 22, and this is the third one, happenings. And now, behold, bound in spirit, I am on my way to Jerusalem, not knowing what will happen to me there. Here it's talking about Paul. He is determined by the will of God to go to Jerusalem. The surprising element is that he does not know what will exactly happen. It shows that we should operate in what we know and trust God in what we don't know. Another illustration of this is in Luke chapter 22, verse 10. And here the story and the account is about Jesus telling the disciples to go and find the upper room. And what he is revealing is something that just happens that ultimately, though, God is in charge of. In Luke 22, verse 10, it says, "And he said to them, when you have entered the city, a man will meet you carrying a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house that he enters." The ideal is that when you enter the city, you will happen upon a man carrying a water. Now just think about that circumstance. The ideal of somehow you're just going to know at the right time, at the right meeting, at the right element that he starts and the disciples start, that they're actually going to meet this individual and he's going to be carrying something, then he's going to direct them to the upper room. This event is a meeting, is an encounter, or a thing that just happens. This is where actions and people and events just connect to each other and they give you the sense of being planned. Jesus actually tells them they are just going to meet. They are just going to connect. He doesn't tell them when to start. He doesn't tell them when to, it's time to go now. Just this event will encompass timing and circumstances and people meeting, and it's not accidental, nor with an unknown purpose, but it is designed, directed, and determined. And what Jesus is showing is that these things which would appear to be a random encounter are really something that are orchestrated, especially for related to his death, and events related to that are all planned. And this shows more clearly that a chance encounter or seemingly random event is designed by God. This seems to be a place where Jesus reveals that this randomness is not random in the common use of the word. There are many other ways Jesus could have revealed the location of the upper room, but he chooses this way. There are many less supernatural ways to get people to a location, like Annas was told by God how to contact Paul, go to the street called Straight, and to the house of Judas in Acts chapter 9, verse 11. This event was designed to give instructions, I think, on how things that have happened and will happen with Jesus could be perceived as random, but are really not, because they fit together as a designed plan. A couple other events, happening type of events, are recorded in Ruth chapter 2, verse 3. In the events of before that, is Ruth is a widow, and she has come back from the land of Moab, and she's a foreigner. And the thing is that so her and her mother have come back, they're destitute, and God directs them. So she departed and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. These occurrences are designed with purpose, but to the human observation it could seem accidental. The place she just happened to come into was the field of one of her kinsman redeemer. The realization that God is planning and they are not just random events, must be supplied by faith and God opening our eyes. And another one, in Esther, the book of Esther, is filled with them. And what you have is a book that has no mention of God's name directly, and yet there's all sorts of events that are clearly, if we are operating by faith and understand who the God of the Bible is and our relationship with Him, we'll see that these are orchestrated events. But notice this in Esther chapter 4, verse 14. He is describing here Mordecai, explaining to Esther because of the decree of Haman that said all the Jews were to be destroyed. And she needs to go to the king and make an appeal about it. But there's a restriction of her ability to do that. In Esther 4:14 it says, "For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this?" And he puts into the whole idea of maybe this is exactly the thing that has been planned. And he doesn't even ascribe it to God. He doesn't even say, these events seem orchestrated to occur, or the situation seems coordinated. But at times, we are unaware why the events seem to be happening just in the order that they are. We are to interpret the circumstances in light of our God. It's almost like there's multiple blank spaces which we are to fill in to help us to reference who is doing this. And we do it based upon our knowledge of God and our awareness of who He is. And we see that they are not accidental. Another verse brings us to light in Esther chapter 9, verse 25. It says, "When it came to the king's attention, he commanded by letter that his wicked scheme," that's Haman's, "which he had devised against the Jews to destroy them, should return on his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows." We know that God returns upon the head of the wicked people their own schemes. We also know those who curse Israel will be cursed. So all of those who are attacking those people of promise, but we have to also interpret all of this in light of His covenant promise. The king is mentioned as doing it, but there is kind of like this blank space, like we talked about, to who ultimately caused it to go this way. And we have to fill in that blank based upon our knowledge of God and His promises. Others who ignore God or remain ignorant fill the blanks with chance, good fortune, or luck, and many other terms that give God no credit. So let's look at a fourth element of explaining providence and how to act in the will of God in the midst of providence, and from Ecclesiastes 3:19. "For the fate of the sons of men and the fate of beasts is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. Indeed, they all have the same breath, and there is no advantage for man over beast, for all is vanity." The human view is fate. Fate is something designed to occur without a direct reference to who caused it or how it happened. This determined fate that I'm going in a certain direction. For the idea of the under the sun view, it looks like fate, just like the inevitable determined end for all living things, and the same lot is the fate of men. Fate is what you call the course to the end, when you have not gone far enough to find the reason. It's going the way and having God taken out of the equation. Fate has a face to it, and it is the face of God. And so God has appointed to each person to die, just like we see the animals dying. So we have to realize people call it faith because they're removing God out of the equation. Or it is to help us to see that we should aggressively put His name in. We have to be ready ourselves for the day when we will see His face and then face the judgment or reward for our action. The fifth one is open doors. Acts chapter 14, verse 27, "When they had arrived and gathered the church together, they began to report all things that God had done with them and how He opened a door of faith to the Gentiles." God provided an open door of faith to these Gentiles. God did the mighty act of saving to these non-Jewish people who believed. The open door idea is that of literally an open door to a closed area. The accessibility was created by God and was for the benefit of others. But again, it doesn't say, a direct go this way, but the door opened, the opportunity came. We are to walk through doors that are opened. 1 Corinthians 6:9, for a wide door for effective service has opened to me, and there are many adversaries. The conflict for many adversaries did not close the door for service. The door is wide, and the opportunity was large to serve the Lord by people coming through that door to believe the truth. Based on the circumstances and the results, he knew it was an open door. We are to take advantage of these open doors and find out what it means later, after the reason is revealed. Revelation 3:7. And to the angel of the church of Philadelphia write, he who is holy, who is true, who has the keys of David, who opens and no one shuts, who shuts and no one opens, says this. So it's describing for us who Jesus is, descriptive of the ability to open doors. Basically, Jesus has keys to open doors. When he opens doors, no one can shut them. If the one having the keys shuts a door, then nobody can open it either. Men don't open and shut opportunities, but the Lord of the church does that. We test doors to see if the Lord has opened them or he has locked them shut. Colossians chapter 4, verse 3. This is a prayer, praying at the same time for us as well, that God will open up to us a door for the word, so that we may speak forth the mysteries of Christ, for which I have been imprisoned. He basically says, pray for open doors. For the word, this is primarily the idea of open doors, to go and serve Christ through those open doors, that people would listen and be open to hearing. The open doors was so he could preach God's gospel. The sixth one we're going to look at is opportunities. Mention opportunity, windows of opportunities. Galatians chapter 6, verse 10. So then, while we have opportunity, let us do good to all men, especially to those who are of the household of faith. This is when you have the time to do something good for all people. The circumstances will present themselves to do this good, and you should make the best use of it. Sometimes the opportunity is not available to act for the benefits of others, and if you avail yourself of this, you will not miss it. But if you don't, you will miss it. So we must take advantage of these opportunities. Another one like this is in Colossians 4:5. Conduct yourself with wisdom toward outsiders, making the most of the opportunity. We are to conduct ourselves in a wise way and to take advantage of the time. For the word that it's talking about, making the most, is to gather from the time. That which is made available. We are to gather up this time. This word is also used for redeem. We are told to act decisively when a situation arises with wisdom related to outsiders, so we might share with them the good news and have opportunity to connect with them and be used by God. Sometimes these opportunities are pressing needs. Titus chapter 3, verse 14. Our people must also learn to engage in good deeds to meet pressing needs, so that they will not be unfruitful. The circumstance of a pressing need are things that just happened that must be handled in a timely manner. You can't just, if somebody has a need, a pressing need, you can't just develop a committee and decide that we'll get to it in a couple of weeks. If it is pressing, it has to be urgent for them. The opportunity needs to be acted upon as the situation reveals itself, and we must not wait or the chance to do good may escape us. The seventh and last area that we're going to look at in this area of providence is casting lots, and really how God is in charge of these things and how we operate within them. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 33 says, the lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. Determining a decision by seemingly random methods like this, casting lots or flipping a coin or drawing straws or rolling the dice or are decisions that God can control. This process goes on the assumption that God will control the random when it comes to needing to make a decision. That's what they did in Jonah chapter 1, verse 7. They needed to know who it was and who was responsible for what was going on, and God showed them. If God can control the area called luck and chance and random or possibility, then the details of life are under his hand of directing. This could also help us with a place of indecisiveness, where two possible directions seem equally good, but the circumstance requires an immediate or needed choice. This seems to be the case in Acts chapter 1 at verse 26, where the apostles are lacking one, and they determine that they need to fill it to 12, and they draw lots to determine. And here are two qualified men, and so they just pick from those and use the casting of lots to do that. So let's summarize what we've learned so far when related to providence. How do I act, or how do I handle these unknown elements in the will of God, which we are labeling providence? First off, we need to realize the assumption that God is leading. If you are a son of God, and God is leading. In Romans chapter 8, verse 14, it says, all who are being led by the Spirit, these are the sons of God. And so we have to assume that God is leading us as we're walking in his way. And so the things that come across our path are forms in which he will lead us. The other thing is that we are to entrust ourselves to him. In 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 19, it says, therefore, those who suffer according to the will of God shall entrust their souls to a faithful Creator in doing what is right. So this is kind of even the worst of circumstances. We are to trust him. We are to trust him that he is doing the right thing, even if we have to suffer in the will of God. God is faithful to do what is right. So trust him when you don't know why they are happening. Happenings happen, chance happens, however the world might want to see it, or the events might seem like we don't know exactly what happened. These activities, under the providence of God, must be responded to by faith. And so in the will of God, they're going to happen in these realms. And the God who is in charge of the things that we don't know about, we can entrust ourselves to him.